The balancing of high ground is one of the most critical elements in the quality of a shooter, especially for battle royale games. And I've noticed the chosen one turning to the dark side as Apex Legends veers farther into a Revenge of the Sith reflection. High ground comes with a natural advantage in hitbox availability. With height, you're gonna see more of your enemy's body, and the first and main thing you'll see is their head. Their cranium will call out for crits, while above them use hits. Then from the low player's perspective, you see less of the enemy, which is often behind impenetrable cover. And what you first see and get through is toesies or the anus, which is not going to give you crits, with a lot to get through to get to the head. And in a shooter, you really want to be getting head, which is why high ground is where good players get that bread. So high ground will have this default advantage, which is good. Advantages and disadvantages are necessary in making a compelling game and a compelling map. A lot of what makes the grand trajectory of a match interesting is the fluctuation of advantage. This is why in sports and gaming, people are captivated by comebacks and likewise cherish lead changes. They can see who has the advantage and how things are trending, and the flip becomes a source of excitement and ecstasy that makes a great game. So high ground being a clear advantage is totally fine, but many games make the mistake of making it far too unconquerable. I always viewed Warzone as the game that exhibited this issue the most. High ground would often come in the form of a fairly realistic building. They often have one or two access points to get to that height. In COD, this is usually a single staircase with a doorway or a ladder. These are death traps for an opposing player. Realistic doorway sizes make them extremely easy to watch and almost hard to miss a person moving through that choke point. And ladders or Warzone style zip lines are disastrous. Weapons can't be accessed while using them and for a brief period of time after finishing using them too. It's also a pretty big time commitment to this vulnerability that the player can't reasonably escape. In these scenarios, the Obi-Wan act is absolute.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground!
This structure gives extremely little the player can do to overcome or overtake the advantage, so it's over. And when things feel pre-decided and the player feels powerless, well, we're back into life.
You don't know about life? How it only disappoints and gets worse and worse until it ends in a catastrophe? What the fuck?
People aren't loading up the game to feel like there's nothing they can do to triumph over the challenges they face. Most people feel that most of their lives, so gaming being an exception to that is one of its biggest possible draws, making it essential for players to feel either powerful or at least like they could be powerful if they were good enough. Game designers should aim to create the Jack Harlow experience. Whether or not they got talent, they got options. And options are something Apex Legends did yeah, that's past tense, do a great job of providing players. Most buildings and areas on the first 3 maps of Apex Legends will have multiple access points. If they are multi-story buildings, they'll feature stairwells and zip lines, but in a far superior way than, say, Warzone. Zip lines can be entered and exited freely and can even become a tool and mechanic with their movement dynamic. Weapons are not stowed so the player does not feel handicapped. However, through audio squates, their location is clear, so their play is not without risk. Most open doorways are much wider in Apex, so engaging a player challenging through one is far less automatic. In addition to all this, in Apex, there are legends. Legends with abilities, most notably movement for this video. These can be both team and individual movements that would practically always be able to scale the full structure, whether it's a horizon lift, octane pad, grapple, zipline, Asia. All of these priming enemies with a sound simplex, alerting them to the play coming their way, keeping a slight edge with the originally advantageous, but providing possibility for players to perform powerfully polished pounces so a play can be made to swing things their way. This was the balance that wowed me from Respawn, the plotizers of Apex who really levulified and enhanced the game after its initial release. I saw so many improvements made to Apex, I had to wonder, was this the prophesized plotizer? The chosen one to employ the game, not destroy it? But now, things aren't looking great. Respawn's last 2 maps show a lapse in the brilliant game design that set Apex apart from other standout shooters. Its latest maps, Storm Point and Broken Moon, are my least favorites by far of the 5 they've created, and completely go away from the practical design decisions previously present. These maps are mountainous, containing massive changes in verticality, scaling significantly more stretched than before. The drastic differences in elevation could be okay in these maps, but the problem is that they are so large that they are not at all easily transferable. With the scale on this level, of course, you're not going to be able to do anything with the normal movements of just jumping and climbing, and a lot of times it's so excessive that the movement abilities in the game are actually just not that useful and can't help you. So you don't get changes of power, and the utility that you have on those characters is absent in a lot of areas, while also making them feel more essential with how punishing trying to traverse the hills of these maps can be without them. Much of the map then becomes much less appealing too, since huge parts of the map are at severe low grounds, so that landing at those locations is punishing. And remember how good their building and zipline design was, allowing for quick exits and choices? Well, here's where we are now. Hopefully we can move elsewhere.
Not get nuked at the top.
Yeah, I hope so.
So you can
This
stand
is
on
so
these
bad.
pipes, I bet.
This is, They're here, they're here. Yeah, we're dead. I'm just dead.
That's terrible.
I literally died instantly. And I can't hear there's people up there because they're 80 miles away. Locations and design decisions in these last 2 maps are outrageously idiotic, from a studio that seemed like they were figuring things out. A ton of blunders on different locations in many different ways, and a lot of them being the absolute center of these maps. And it seems their solutions to this increased scale was global movement devices like the grav cannons and the zip rails. Things that are pretty cool, but provide drastic player movement, and when it comes to gameplay and combat interactions, they really suck. Taking a cannon is begging to fall into a trap as they know exactly where you're gonna land, and zip rails regularly prolong fights and bail out undeserving players with the insane speed that they provide. Even a lot of individual buildings on these maps have fewer access points and don't have them through all of their expansive vertical levels, so it can become really hard to figure out how to get into a damn building and just do the core of the game, the reason you're playing, to fight and shoot people. It's like every change Respawn comes out with lately is just delaying how smoothly and readily that can actually happen. Even the most recent character edition of Catalyst really kind of proves this point. Everything surrounding her kit is just about making the game slower, harder to play, less visibility, less fluidity and freedom of movement, and just bogging down everything in disgusting shit. And that's essentially what Apex is going towards. The direction of Apex Legends is in serious need of a SWO. It seems like they've gotten to the point in their lifespan as a BR and game where they're just adding new content that's either different or that they think is cool without thinking of any of the repercussions of what it really brings to the game and how it will change the gameplay dynamics. The constant pushing of new without actually thinking if it's gonna make anything better is one of the primary ways to deteriorate a game, and we've been seeing it for a while. Come back to the good side, Respawn. That's it for me. Peace out.
I loved you.